How are you doing? I'm Devon Sanders, the host of Fantastic Forum. And first of all, I'd like to introduce our guest. Over here to my right, we got James Rambo. Next to him is Chris Peleo-Lazar and Gene Green. And this week we're going to be talking about DC's New 52. We're about 6 months into it right now. What are your thoughts on it?
I think that two of the best books running are perfect examples of why the whole reboot didn't have to happen, period. Batman and Green Lantern have been phenomenal. Batman more so. And both of them are perfectly in line with previous continuity, with no shakeups whatsoever.
Well, yeah, they pretty much did have a, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, they pretty much went in with the same creative teams and everything like that.
Yeah, it was a great idea, and it's funny because you read Green Lantern and you're like, okay, John still knows how to write.
Right.
Aquaman's the same way. And then you read Justice League and you're like, is it like a stage name? Is there somebody else that's doing this? Or why? What's going on? Why do I feel like every member of the Justice League is heading off to a kegger as soon as the scene's over? It's just very disappointing.
Well, the DC's New 52 it's a good experiment. It's fun that they've tried to go more diverse. They've entered in a whole new, different type of comic. They've allowed older types of comics. They've brought them back. The old Western comics are back. They have military comics that are back. So it's interesting. And they've also got more diverse characters than they did before, or at least giving them more spotlight, allowing characters like Cyborg to be in the Justice League, which Justice League hasn't had, outside of brief times when Jon Stewart's been part of the Justice League, hasn't had many minority members on the team. So it's really a good experiment. I agree on some respects that did it need to happen, or couldn't they just transition this into normality?
What bugs me is, on the flip side of that, they've just axed 7 books, two creators of which were the only black writers at DC at the moment.
Right. It was like in one day there was like a culling of 100% of African American writers in all of comics.
Which is kind of impressive when you think about it. But just, it bugged me because, one, I don't care about Cyborg. And it's not because he's a black character. It's not because I don't care.
Right.
I've never cared about Cyborg. When I was reading Teen Titans, it was like, okay, he's an important character. But a big fish in a small pond in terms of Teen Titans, you move him up to the Justice League, it's like...
But at one point, you have to go from being a Teen Titan. When you're in your 20s and 30s, you're no longer Teen Titan anymore. You have to grow up and be in the big leagues. And, I mean, it has to happen at some point. So it's... But you brought up about how the axing of all... Organizationally, I'm not sure what DC Comics was doing when they launched all this, and then they decided to... There's so much turnover going on. A lot of writers are shifting around. Seems like they had no plan after the beginning.
Well, it's funny because you look at what, the way they've been trying to spin it, and they've been very vague in terms of like when the times were that they really made these decisions, when they were deciding to do this whole relaunch or reboot or whatever I'm going to call it. And the reason they're being so vague is there's been interviews with a couple of the creators and like May of 2011 is when they made this decision. That's when we knew either we were working on stuff, we weren't working on stuff, and when to start getting things done.
Right, but the decision was made. It wasn't so much to like introduce new concepts, new writers, or anything like that. It was basically to jumpstart the universe to bring in new readers. Like, one of the things that's happened at the comic shop that I go to is that people who had never picked up DC Comics on the regular are suddenly starting to pick them up. So, I mean, in that sense, it's working. But, like, but what do you see as far as, like, what's working out there?
It's disappointing. It's really frustrating. I mean, with that said, I'm reading Swamp Thing. I'm reading Animal Man.
Yeah.
I'm reading I'm so excited that there is an Aquaman comic that doesn't suck. What's the face? What's the face?
I love that Aquaman is back, and it's so strange. You tell people who don't read comics that you're excited to read Aquaman, and they give you the most strange look imaginable.
Yeah.
They tell you it's like the guy who talks to fishes. They go, yes, and that's part of the challenge that is DC Comics. Is a lot of it is they're ancient properties in terms of characters,
Exactly.
and it's hard to, and they want to make them modern really bad, and they're going to have a lot of problems. They're going to try do some interesting things, some things that some people might see unnecessary. The Superman costume, which seems to be the big focal point of DC videos, what they've done to Superman. It's hard to change old things like that are so beloved. It's like trying to change Mickey Mouse. They don't do it for a reason. I admire that they're doing it. I think that it's just not the greatest execution, but that's what's going to happen with the comic book industry. It's got to keep shifting and keep going.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about execution, and one of the things, it might not be what we would have done, but, frankly, nobody asked us. You don't want to ask a fan, how do you fix comic books?
Well, that's like you
right.
Austin.
That's just, right. But here's the deal. Aquaman outsold last month every Marvel comic.
That's fantastic.
So it's working. It's working.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's working? I mean,
good storytelling.
Yeah.
I mean, I know Aquaman, everybody likes to joke about that character, but Peter David had an excellent run in the 90s with spotlighting that character. And it shouldn't be a marketing ploy. It should be good storytelling. And Jeff Johns is writing a good Aquaman. That's what it comes down to. If you can present a great story, a great product, then that'll sell.
I thought that that turning the Fantastic Four into a horror book and calling it Animal Man was a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
And something that I've heard really good things about Morrison's run on Animal Man. I tried to pick up the first volume and I just couldn't get through it. Not because it was bad, not because I liked or didn't like it. It was kind of dry, and I didn't really get the appeal. So I suppose there's something to be said for the relaunch. There's been this whole sort of like revival of the 90s and a lot of the aspects of this, like the frat boy Justice League.
Oh god.
It's funny, the one line that I didn't have a problem with was the one that I found a lot of other people did. Is when they introduced Wonder Woman and Green Lantern goes dibs. I'm like, yeah, that's Green Lantern.
Yeah,
right.
He's an Air Force guy.
But everybody's talking like that. Like everybody, when Aquaman shows up at the end of the issue, which is again Jeff Johns. It would be one thing if it was two writers writing this character. It's not. It's one guy.
Right.
And in the Aquaman book, he's written as kind of a humble guy, kind of frustrated with the station he has right now. And he shows up. He's like, "Who's in charge here? I vote me." Really? Is that seriously how we're going to do it? Where's your backwards cap and your popped polo shirt, man? It's just just ridiculous.
Well, that's because it's also taking 5 years earlier. There's something happens. There's something supposed to be and that says a lot that there might not be a plan for it, or because there's something traumatic supposed to happen in the DC universe in which Superman becomes very confident because the superhero. We're seeing him very early in his days in Action Comics. Something happened, and Green Lantern, we know what happens to Green Lantern because they're keeping all that. But Aquaman becomes this guy who actually likes humans, likes human culture, and is very calm and, as you said, humble. Something must happen in between then, and I don't know what they're going to do, but it's kind of the little bit of mystery we get is right there.
I don't know. I think it's that they want us to think that something happened. That it seems like they all got in a boat and just headed out to sea with no idea where they were heading.
Right.
And it just really, really bugs me, man.
Right.
Like,
well, that's pretty much why I think a lot of people are having issues with the Big 52 relaunch right now, is that there's this sort of massive disconnect where it's like you're being told that Action Comics takes place 5 years in the past. You're being told that Justice League takes 5 years in the past. But then you're reading Superman and it happens now. Yeah. And the Superman that you're seeing in Justice League is nothing like the Superman that you're seeing in Superman. So there's an issue going on there. Same thing with Batman, when it's like the first time you see all the Robins together, Dick Grayson's like a foot shorter than like Batman. So there's a massive disconnect that really people don't seem to, they can't figure out exactly where it is right now.
But it's weird because this is the second time that they're doing this.
Right.
You had the Crisis, and now you have this relaunch.
Well, but that's one of the things about like these relaunches. Like, remember with Crisis on Infinite Earths, everything was informed about pre-Crisis, post-Crisis. And I wonder if we're going to be talking about that in terms of everything being pre-52, post-52.
Oh, almost certainly. Oh, it's only a matter of time.
But hold on to that thought. We'll be right back.
We are here at the Baltimore Comic-Con talking to Jason Aaron. Thank you very much for talking to us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you are absolutely the hottest thing going in comic books today. You had X-Men and Wolverine, and but the basis of this stuff is this other work that you've done, Scalped, and The Other Side. How did you come up with Scalped? I mean, the whole business of a story that unfolds on this Indian reservation and the depth to it. Where did that come from?
Well, I did The Other Side for Vertigo, which was the first big project I'd ever done. Right after that, I pitched a small group of books. Scalped was one of those. I knew I wanted to do a crime book. I love crime series. My editor, Will Dennis, is a big crime guy. And it just clicked. I mean, the Native American history and culture is something I'd been interested in for a while, and I'd never seen a book quite like Scalped. You don't see many stories at all set on modern day Indian reservations, so just all kind of came together. In terms of The Other Side, my cousin Gus Hasford was a Vietnam vet and novelist, and he wrote the book that Full Metal Jacket was based on. So kind of through researching his life and hanging out with some of his old friends and fellow vets, that's kind of what inspired The Other Side. It's kind of 3 years of my life where that was pretty much all I was reading and working on was his life, and ultimately that led to that book. I have a lot of vets come up to me at shows. I have a lot of comic fans come up to me who say their dad was in Vietnam, and it's something they never really talked about, but they're a comic fan. They bought this book and gave it to him, and their dad read it and really liked it. So stuff like that is really cool. Vets. I mean, the Vietnam War even today is still a very controversial subject. It's still something, especially the guys who are there, feel very strongly about from a lot of different perspectives. So, it's hard to get those guys to agree on anything. To have what feels like a pretty overwhelmingly positive response to that has been great.
Well, ditto with Scalped, because as you pointed out, stories that take place on Indian reservation, dealing with Native American characters, you just don't see that, and especially not in comics. What sort of feedback have you gotten regarding Scalped? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the response to Scalped has been great. It's the same thing. Again, I'm a white guy from Kansas writing a book that's set in South Dakota on a Indian reservation. So there's some people who aren't going to like it just based off that. There's some people who don't, not going to like Scalped because of the subject matter. It's a very gritty book. It's a dark and rather depressing book at times. It's a very violent book. But the response has, again, been overwhelmingly positive, and I hear from a lot of Native American comic fans who love the book. And Scalped is the whole reason I have a comic book career. That's what led to me doing all the Marvel stuff that I'm doing right now.
Well, what's it like doing this Marvel, because now you're doing the conventional superheroes, which is kind of light after some of the stuff that you were doing earlier. How does that feel?
It's great. I mean, some of my superhero stories aren't so light. I still do some pretty dark superhero stuff. But yeah, I mean, I like doing different kinds of things. Some of the stuff I'm doing like now, like with the X-Men stuff I'm doing, I want to be fun. I want to be a little more kid-friendly. Just a big, fun superhero book that really embraces the fact that it is a superhero book and has fun with that. So I like being able to do that stuff in 1 week and then turn around and write an issue of Scalped about drug addiction the next week. I like being able to flex those different creative muscles like that.
Now, I heard, and I don't know whether this is accurate or not, you might be coming to a conclusion with Scalped. Is there any truth to that?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much out there now, that issue 60 will be the last one, which has always been the plan, or been the plan for a long time now. So we weren't canceled. This was me ending the book when I wanted to end it. I've known the ending from the very beginning, from when I first pitched the book. It's changed a little bit and developed as things have gone along, but we've always been moving towards that specific point. And I always thought 60 seemed like a good number. I knew if by the time we got there, we'd be pretty close. It just turned out, we'll end exactly on 60. So we got two last big arcs, to wrap everything up.
All right, what other characters do you think that you might like to write in the future?
Well, I'm writing a ton right now. I mean, I've got new X-Men stuff coming out and new Hulk stuff, but beyond that, probably my favorite comic character just in general is the Thing from the Fantastic Four. But I've only written, a little bit here and there, so I'd love to do something bigger with the Thing and any of the Fantastic Four. And you know, if I should ever happen to find myself at DC one day, which you know is not going to happen anytime soon, I'm locked up at Marvel, but I would love to do a Hawkman book. I love Hawkman. So yeah. But I got plenty of stuff at Marvel to keep me busy for the foreseeable future.
Oh, no doubt, and everybody loves your work. I mean, in fact, they were talking about you in a panel yesterday, and this huge cheer went up to the crowd when they mentioned your name.
Cool.
Hi, my name's Charlie Adlard of The Walking Dead, and you're watching the Fantastic Forum.
The iconic television series Star Trek is famous for a great deal in pop culture. Among the constants of the series, which included Captain Kirk getting his shirt ripped during fights and red-shirted security officers meeting their end on away missions, were the beautiful female guest stars. Scantily clad and almost always cast as a love interest for Captain Kirk, this bevy of beauties helped Gene Roddenberry's brainchild weave itself into the hearts and minds of generations of fans. So, in honor of the original Star Trek series, we here at Fantastic Forum proudly present our choice for the top 10 hottest women from Star Trek the original series. Number 10, from Conscience of the King, Barbara Anderson as Lenore Caridian. Number 9, from City on the Edge of Forever, Joan Collins as Edith Keeler. Number 8, from What Are Little Girls Made Of, Sherry Jackson as Andrea. Number 7, from Dagger of the Mind, Mariana Hill as Dr. Helen Noel. Number 6, from Who Mourns for Adonis, Leslie Parrish as Lieutenant Carolyn Palamas. Number 5, from Mirror Mirror, Barbara Luna as Marlena Moreau. Number 4, from This Side of Paradise, Jill Ireland as Layla Coloni. Number 3, from The Cloudminders, Diana Ewing as Droxine. Number 2, from Amok Time, Arlene Martell as T'Pring. And number 1 has to be Nichelle Nichols as Lieutenant Nyota Uhura.
Welcome back to Fantastic Forum. We've been talking about DC's recent relaunch of the 52 books in the universe. And Chris, during the break, had like a really great point about them basically having done this before, but with JLA Year One. You want to follow up on that?
A few years ago, Mark Waid wrote this maxi series, which is a 12-issue series, not a mini series, which reintroduced the Justice League, told about their first year as a team, and it was this interesting way of how to get used to being superheroes. And it got me thinking about the whole DC 52. It might have been nice, instead of having this disconnect between 5-year gaps and 10-year gaps, to just reintroduce everyone. If this is for new audiences, why not just show them who they are, their first story, what it's like to be a superhero star in our world. And it seems like they went halfway in that, not even halfway, they dipped their foot in water instead of going in for making the whole deal about reintroducing the DC universe to everyone.
Right, because one of the things that I'm having an issue with is like you already have like almost 80 years of continuity behind these characters, and we're supposedly seeing them for the first time, and they're not acting almost anything like what we know. So that, like, you know, it's like Aquaman's a little kind of feisty, he's a little, you know, imperial, and it's not the Aquaman that we're used to. So yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble with it. But, you know, and also the whole thing with Darkseid, you know, he just shows up out of nowhere and it's like, oh, and now you must fight me. But then he stands around for a whole issue. Not to complain, but, you know, that's not great comics. And right now, you know, it's Darkseid could be like a cardboard cutout for all that it really matters.
He could be.
Yeah.
We don't know that. I don't know. I liked Year One. That was great. In fact, DC did a whole bunch of Year One annuals and miniseries. We really don't need. Do we really need to be told Superman's origin again?
Right, exactly.
You know, Dune Planet, baby sent to Earth,
Right.
becomes superhero.
Right.
We get it, and we don't need Batman's origin told again.
Right.
These characters, people know Batman, Superman, so you should just launch into the title, like Superman, I don't know, fighting a giant dinosaur. That's what we need to see. You know, you don't need to set up who the Joker is. You don't need to set up who Batman is.
Right.
Just hop in there. Maybe characters like Hawk and Dove, not written by Liefeld. You know,
Right.
people need to be sort of introduced to them. But the big guns, you know, people walk around wearing Wonder Woman T-shirts.
Right.
We don't need that.
Well, the thing that kind of stands out with me about this whole 52 thing is that as they started to announce what the books were, there were no genuine surprises. Like, there were none. It was like, okay, Scott Snyder's coming back to do Batman. Brian Azzarello, yeah, he's doing Wonder Woman, kind of a surprise, but it was something that you could see. There wasn't like that one big book where it was just like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing that. Like, that never happened. So
It's so funny that, you know, 2 years ago, it was clear that the not the relaunch, but that some of the ideas were sort of long coming. Like, Jeff Johns and Jim Lee were going to do a Justice League book.
I think it was All-Star Justice League.
It was. I think it was supposed to be an All-Star
yeah,
Justice
that was
League
one
thing.
of the worst kept secrets of all time.
And basically, like, Johns came out and was like, look, we're going to do something. I have no idea what it's going to be. I don't know when it's going to come, but it's going to be the Justice League. That's the story. And I was like genuinely excited because I heard Jim Lee, then I thought Hush. I'm like, man, he did a kind of kick-ass job
Right.
on Batman and stuff. And then it comes out, and I read the first couple issues. I'm like, why am I reading this book? It feels almost like a waste of my time to pick this up. And what I mean, this is my frustration. There's a reason that the Avengers movie is coming out after 2 Hulk movies, 2 Iron Man movies, 1 Captain America movie, and 1 Thor
Right.
movie. We've established these characters.
Right.
We know who they are. So now we get to watch them punch things.
But just to move away from that for a little bit, what books out there in the New 52 have genuinely surprised you? Like, Gene?
Oh, nothing's really surprised me. I'm surprised that there's nothing that's been like amazing.
Right.
The only title that I'm reading, like I subscribe to, is The Flash.
Okay.
But that's only because I'm a lifelong Flash fan.
Right.
I like Scott Snyder's Batman, but there's nothing that's grabbing me.
Okay.
For me, the New 52, it seems like a big bust. The Flashpoint leading into it was a failure, and this...
Flashpoint, that's a whole nother
Yeah,
conversation.
that was a strange experience.
That was
Alright.
very
Chris,
strange.
what do you think?
I enjoy Stormwatch. Stormwatch is a book that it's kind of Justice League weird. It's Paul Cornell, who has got a great history with science fiction and fantasy, and he's having fun with this. It is really a shame that he's not going to be staying on it long, but it is it's a team book that is in the shadows of all the DC universe. We have a lot of pseudo Justice Leagues. We have Justice League Dark, which I actually enjoy. It's the crazier the idea, the more I think people like it. People are liking Swamp Thing because it's kind of crazy. Animal Man is completely insane. It is a dark and insane, and it is generally being well received. I actually like Demon Knights, which is also written by Paul Cornell, as being this odd fantasy medieval presence where you see Vandal Savage, a classic character, finally in his realm. The medieval slaughtering things is perfect for him. And Etrigan, which is this character, has always been there, and if you ever watched the cartoon, it was also fun to see him there.
Right.
It's fun. When DC is at its best, when it's most fun and weird and quirky. That's its niche. It's something that Marvel never really can do.
And I think you nailed it right there. Like, the books where, like, it seems like DC took the biggest risk, the ones who out the box seemed to be like, oh, this book could be struggling, but they just said, you know what, let's put this guy on there and see what he can do. Like, you know, like an Animal Man, like a Swamp Thing. Those are the books that people are talking about. And yeah, they're talking about Batman, they're talking about Wonder Woman, they're talking about Superman. But the books that you talked about, they probably feel the most in tone to, like, when DC first got Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman on those books and went off to create like the Vertigo universe. It was just like anything can happen. So what do you like it, James?
One thing I can say, there have been more younger readers, more female readers that have been picking stuff up. And even if it's books that I can't stand, God bless them, because you made them pick up a comic book.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things about expanding audiences that's really great is that there are people who had never picked up a Vertigo book. There are people who would never pick up a Wildstorm book back when Wildstorm existed. And what they've done is they've brought them in. They brought them in from the shadows to allow people to actually even get a taste of what they were. The Vertigo books we see in Animal and Swamp Things, Wildstorm for Stormwatch, and we're seeing more and more little bits in the Wildstorm universe seeping in, and it's kind of nice to see it expanding. See that people are getting to see the things that they're fans out there, the biggest fans in the world of these things, and they got a little bit to keep alive with.
Yeah, I'm just curious if you see people picking up these newer titles, are they then inquiring about the older collections?
You get a lot of questions about, okay, I really like this Green Lantern. What else should I pick up? And then it kind of becomes, okay, do I want to confuse them with certain comics? Or do I want to sort of, I think a big part of the one of the things that bugs me about the push for this whole relaunch thing was also, it's not a matter of comics were inaccessible. It's a matter of, I know a guy who does much more indie stuff, and he says everybody who's reading superhero comics, or everybody who wants to read superhero comics is. I'm like, that's absolutely not true. I couldn't disagree with that more. Because there are tons of things that I'm sure I would enjoy that I'm just not aware of. And yes, people know that comics exist, and people know that movies exist, but that doesn't mean... I know that there are people who play music, but that doesn't mean I've listened to every piece of music.
But what it really comes down to, in my opinion, is just that, frankly, I think that we should just be happy that they are still out there for us. These superheroes, these characters, these stories. They still exist, and they still have something to say. And with that said, we'll be right back.
Join the Fantastic Forum fan community on Facebook for all the latest news and information, and follow us on Twitter.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of Fantastic Forum. You all take care. Bye.